When most people think about the cleaning and restoration industries, they think about the work happening in homes and buildings. Maybe they don't think about Washington, D.C., but the reality is decisions made on Capitol Hill, and we can't forget state and local government, it all directly impacts how our industry operates, grows, and serves its customers. That's why events like the IICRC Legislative Fly-In really matter. This September, industry professionals will gather in D.C. to meet face to face with lawmakers and advocate for the standards, certifications, and work that define this profession. So today we're going to talk with some leaders behind this effort, why it's so important, what attendees can expect, and how advocacy today is shaping the future of the industry. And to do this, I'm pleased to welcome two from the IICRC, Craig Powers and Robbie Bradshaw. For someone in the cleaning and restoration industry who's never participated in something like this, why does showing up on Capitol Hill actually matter? What's at stake? And I'd like you both to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do before you answer that question. So, Robbie, you're up first.
Yeah, I'm Robbie Bradshaw. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the IICRC. And I would say it's vitally important to come to Capitol Hill, mainly because it's very important to have a seat at the table. And right now, for the last few years that I've worked at the IICRC, I've realized that for the longest time, our industry really didn't, at least from the restoration standpoint, really didn't have a seat at the table, didn't have anybody advocating on behalf of it. And that has changed since I came on. Other organizations have added directors of government affairs and things like that. But it's really important to get that seat at the table. And the best way to ensure that is to have the conversations with the people that create the table. And so I think when we come to DC or your state legislature or your local city council, you're having conversations with the people that create that table. And so next time they do create the table, they'll ensure that our industries have a seat at that table. And so I think that's why it's vital to show up and to make sure that we create those relationships with our policymakers, with their staffs, so that when the time comes, they're going to call on us.
That's the first time I've heard someone say anything about creating the table. I like it. That's brilliant, Robbie. Yeah, that's what they're doing. We want to be there when they do that. Craig, let's hear from you. Introduce yourself and tell us what you think about this topic, about the fly-in and why it matters, what's at stake.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Craig Powers. I'm the second vice president of the IICRC. And to that point, creating the table, sometimes in our industry, we kind of have to do that because our industry is not really recognized by the federal government. And so we do have to create that table. And let's face it, most of these legislators, they've never been on a water loss. They've, maybe experienced some cleaning in the home by professional certified cleaners. But when it comes to the restoration side, they've never experienced what we do. And there's a lot of legislation, a lot of regulation. It's happening today, and it's historically happened to us. And so by having a voice and a seat at that table, we can now help direct how this legislation is going to impact our industry. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, we will. And thinking about that, Craig, let's stick with you on this question because you're going to be there and you're involved. What will attendees experience during the fly-in? I know Robbie alluded to some of the bigger picture there, but talk about the conversations with congressional offices, what they look like, and how to be prepared for that.
It's super fun. This really has not been something that I ever would see myself doing. And last year, I started doing that with another organization. And I had so much fun. Everything is planned out. Every meeting is scheduled for you. All of the talking points are given to you. All of the initiatives are handed to you. And so it's so easy just to show up and be present and tell your story. And that's really what they want to hear. Are you going to meet with your legislators? Probably not. You may see them if they're rushing in and out of the office for meetings and so forth. But for the most part, we're going to meet with their staffers. Their staffers are typically very, very nice. They're interested in what we do. They're interested in our industry. because what we do affects everybody, right? And so they are captivated by our industry and our stories. I'll tell you a quick little story. We just returned from DC and our advocating event with ISSA. And a gal that was on our team, she just got her citizenship. She's a neighbor of mine, kind of up north here in Washington State. And she started her own business and she's transitioning from using subcontractors to hiring her own labor force. And her story was so captivating. People, all the staffers, they just really honed in on that. So that's the core message here. Tell your story, right? It hits home with them. And I'm telling you, they really take note. And that's going to drive our messaging and hopefully help drive legislation or some support for legislation.
Rob, anything to add to that? That was a nice description, Craig. Thank you. Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, to Craig's point, a lot of people think, well, I've never done it before. I don't even know how to prepare for this event. You don't have to. I mean, I promise you that you are going to be, when you come, there'll be 2 days. The first day, we're going to train you how to advocate. So we're going to give you all the materials. We're going to tell you this is how the conversations are going to go. And I promise you the next day when you go on Capitol Hill, you are going to be prepared. You're never going to be alone. There will be other members from your state that are going to be advocating alongside you. So, it can be intimidating to think about, but in reality, it really isn't. And not to mention, you get 14 CEC credits, for attending the full event. So it's $149 early bird to register. You get CEC credits, and all the work's done for you. That's a rarity.
Robbie, let's stick with you on this and let's talk about the bigger picture beyond this event, because this is a big deal, but it's going to lead to more. How do efforts like this influence the future of the industry?
Yeah, I think that one of the big pictures that I'm seeing, and it's kind of in the rumblings at the moment, is a big focus in Congress on disaster recovery. And when I'm listening to these conversations or having these conversations about disaster recovery, one of the areas that never comes up, one of the industries that doesn't get discussed, is cleaning and restoration. There's a lot of insurance talk. There's a lot of FEMA regulations and things like that. But our industry is not being discussed. And I think it's going to be pivotal that when we go up there, have these conversations, explain what we do from a disaster recovery standpoint, whether it's a wildfire or a flood or a hurricane, that the next time they put forth a large bill or even a small bill, that our industry standards and our certifications are going to be included. For instance, I started advocating on behalf of the IICRC for mold and military housing, and I was advocating for the adoption of the S520, and that started 4 or 5 years ago. And so when it came time earlier this year, there was some discussion about a new bill. We said, well, I was working with another organization, and I said, well, we need to make sure that folks that are performing this work are certified. It's not just the standard of being adopted, but it's the people that actually have taken a class, been trained on how to do this. And so our certifications, as well as other industry certifications, found their way into brand new legislation called the Mold Act. And that was simply because we had been having these conversations over and over and over again on Capitol Hill about the same topic. And yes, it took 4 or 5 years, but we've got it introduced, and now we're going to continue to advocate for it, which is one of the things we'll be advocating for in September.
Yeah, I think that, our industry needs a little bit of promotion, and, we're really promoting professionalism, safety, competency, right? And once again, it's really kind of an unknown industry. When a disaster happens, how do these people know who to call, right? If they're not commercial clients that might have an MSA or already have dealt with this before, most of these customers have never seen us or had to deal with us. And so I think having some of this legislation will really help and promote our professionalism and our our place in the industry.
Now, Craig, we'll stick with you on this one because I believe you're an active contractor yourself. Am I right?
You're right. Correct.
Okay. So many contractors, and you can speak for yourself and others that you might know, might feel like policy and advocacy are someone else's job. You want to do your work with your business. Someone else should take care of everything else. What would you say to them about why their voice is important in these conversations? Because they're probably wrong about their thinking.
Look, I've been doing this since the 80s. And so I've seen this industry from the cleaning side to the restoration side really transition several times. And I deal a lot with insurance carriers. And so our voice really does matter. And for me at this point in my career, to spend time volunteering and advocating, in my mind, there's no better way to spend my efforts. And I would, we've seen problems in our industry. I think anybody watching this has known, heard, or experienced of problems in our industry, and you name the problems, and there's probably some legislation behind, somebody that's advocated for it, somebody that's donated, whatever the case might be. And so us as an industry, to really form our group and our voice in Washington, D.C. is critical. It's more critical now than it ever has been. And, if you join us in September, and we hope you do, and experience this, trust me, you will have a great time. But the process and the advocacy will really go a long way. We're really making some strides in our industry right now, and it's important that we keep that momentum.
And I'll say that down below in the episode notes, I'll put a link to learn more and to register for this event because people watching might be like, how do I do this? Where do I sign up? We'll make sure that's easy to find. Robbie, last question. We'll start with you, and Craig, offer some thoughts if you'd like afterwards. But when attendees leave Washington after these 2 days, what do you hope they'll walk away with, not just in knowledge, but in mindset and confidence?
Well, I hope they walk away with, the confidence that it's not that difficult to talk to your policymaker. I mean, if you call and schedule a meeting, which we're going to do for you with this event, but if you call and schedule a meeting, someone's going to meet with you. The thing is, you are a constituent. You have the ability to vote for this policymaker, this legislator, or not. And so they want to hear from you. They work for you, and they want to hear your stories. And I think when people really understand, I hope they leave here understanding how important their stories really are and the impact that they're making. We were talking at the ISSA Clean Advocacy Summit in 2025 when we went. The ISSA and IICRC have been working on this issue for a while, but one of the issues that we advocated for was the Tomorrow's Workforce Act, which allowed people to use their 529 savings plans for industry certifications. And from that advocacy summit, there were multiple policymakers that we met with that signed on to that bill as co-sponsors that inevitably passed last year. And so I think it's important to note that these conversations really do have an impact, not just on our industry as a whole, but on legislation that affects our industry. The Mold Act right now has only a couple of people, and we'll be advocating for other things, but it's got a couple of co-sponsors on it. I'd love to get more. I'd love to get bits and pieces of that thrown into this year's National Defense Authorization Act. So we really do have an opportunity to make an impact, and I hope people will realize that when they leave.
Thank you, Robbie. Craig, anything to add to that?
We need to unify our industry, and when you show up and you participate and you engage, all it's going to do is elevate our profession. And I hope you feel really proud about doing that, because trust me, you will feel very proud by engaging, by advocating, right? So you will meet other cleaning and restorers from your state. You will gain those contacts, and it's just going to make our industry so much stronger. So we really need your voice there in Washington, D.C.